Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and I have a physics lesson to share with you today. We're working through our live education Waldorf curriculum, and this is the introduction to physics. So I've written a lot of notes in the margins of these pages because this is more of a resource than it is a curriculum. So there is prep work that you need to do in order to present these lessons. We're working in our main lesson books rather than the chalkboard. These measure 9.5 inches by 12.5 inches, and each of these pages are separated by an onion skin. I'm working with our Sargent Art Square Chalk Pastels for this lesson, but you could use color pencils if you wish. I'm going to divide up the page into roughly 4 different segments because we are studying sound and the way that sound moves through different medias. So we have the earth, which is sort of to the right. I wanted it more at the bottom. And then water, so I've got sort of an ocean on the left side. And then a blue sky, sort of a sunset sky with a sun kind of going behind the mountains. And then some clouds separating the atmosphere so that we can also include space. Because while we did speak about the movement of sound through these different medias that we have on our planet, I also wanted to talk about how sound cannot move in a vacuum, and that would be outer space. So I'm working with my chalk pastels to sort of blend these colors up together just to kind of give it a nice scene where we can then talk about the different speeds of sound through these different mediums. But it wasn't as segmented as I wanted it to be, and I wanted it to go from the fastest, which is on earth or solid or wood or steel at the very bottom, to a little bit faster in liquids, to slower in the air, to virtually non-existent when you get into a vacuum. And instead, this sort of is a mix of all 3 towards the bottom, and then we have the space at the top. But I think that the presentation and the understanding is still there, and we talked a lot about this lesson before we did the main lesson book work. On this piece of paper in between these 2 sheets, I'm actually going to use it. I didn't tear it out at first, and I thought I really wanted to add a little bit more to this illustration, so I'm going to do a pencil drawing of a tuning fork, which we use for a lot of our demonstrations for this first lesson. And then I'm trying to think of how to show how these sound waves would differ in these different mediums from air to solid to liquid. And then I just decide to sort of space out these sound waves a little bit closer together or a little bit farther apart, depending on which medium it's going through. Then I decide to add some form drawing in the form of what looks like sound waves at the top and the bottom of this page, leaving some room for a title. And then I'm using my fountain pen to write the content for this lesson, which could also be the notes that you are using in order to present the lesson. And it can also become copywork or dictation for your student. So instead of doing these lessons on the chalkboard as I have done in the past, I am now doing them in a main lesson book, which means that I can keep them. My daughter can look at them and not have to worry about getting all of her lessons done before I have to erase the chalkboard and start on the new lesson. So this has become a way for us to really do our 3-day learning cycle without the pressure of not getting work done before we have to move on. I am using 3 paragraphs for this narration, each one talking a little bit about the movement of sound through these different mediums. But I feel like once we were done with the lesson, we covered so much more than what we were able to contain in our main lesson book for the work that followed this lesson, that I feel like we could use another 2-page spread to talk about sound before we move on to the next topic in this series, which would be optics. This main lesson book is an introduction to physics, just covering heat, sound, and light. We do get into deeper topics in the following main lesson block, but we're going to finish this portion of acoustics and then follow with another introduction in optics before we move on to heat and then finally into the second level of physics. Since we use our chalk pastels, we do need to use a matte finish. I'm going to shake this up and use this outside since it does have a very strong odor. I'm going to spray all of our chalk work, and I even spray a little bit of our pencil drawing. And then you want to leave this outside to dry thoroughly before you work on it or fold your book. So here's a last look at the lesson that we did. I hope that you enjoyed this look at our lesson on the speed of sound. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video where you can find more pictures and links to all of the resources for this lesson. You can find the link to that blog post in the description box below. And if you'd like to see how we're homeschooling on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram and now on TikTok at Pepper and Pine.